which is things that are spiritual or ways of performance and so forth. And we can see here this breakdown. So the tangible heritage is composed both of things that are immovable, so buildings, places, sites, but it also consists of things that are movable as well. So we go to a museum and we look at art objects, archaeological finds, statues, and so forth. So between these two things, we have all of the things that are considered the tangible cultural heritage. And on the other hand, there's the intangible heritage, which is the things that give it life. And so we're looking at things like storytelling, folk tales, songs, music, performing arts, knowledges that's passed down from our ancestors, including beliefs about nature, beliefs about the universe, and so forth. These are all things that we would consider intangible heritage and craftsmanship as well. And so, as a kind of warm-up exercise, I thought we would spend a few minutes thinking about the cultural heritage here in Penang and in Malacca as well, which consists, of course, in this case, an example of buildings, but then also we can see a lot of living heritage as well. And I think that's the attraction of Penang and Malacca. There are a lot of people who may not be interested to go and see an archaeological site, but are really interested to come and see a living town where the people are still here, they're still practicing the things that are passed down from their grandparents and great-grandparents. The way of life is still very much vibrant, the way of eating and speaking and living and so forth. And so this, I think, is the main attraction of Georgetown and Malacca. And so I think as a cultural heritage specialist guide, when we think about what to present to our visitors, it's important to bear in mind all of these different components. So I thought we would spend a few minutes together, maybe just you would just shout out, what do you think are different components of the cultural heritage of the World Heritage Site of the Straits of Malacca? Straits. Religion. Architecture. Food.
Language.
Lifestyle.
Costume. Festivals. Social practice.
Lifestyle. Social practice. What else?
Trade.
Sorry?
Trade. Yes.
Trade. Handicrafts?
Debus.
Oh, yes. Taboos?
Monuments.
Monuments?
Performing arts.
Performing arts.
Landscape.
Landscape.
Cultural landscapes.
Cultural landscape.
Rite of passage.
Sorry?
Rite of passage.
Rites of passage. So that's quite a lot already, I think. I think it captures quite a... Sorry, any more?
Music.
Music, yes. Arts and music. Arts as well. Sorry, my handwriting is really terrible.
The three M.
Yes.
Unseen, the myth, the mystery, and mystic.
Myth,
Mystery
mystery,
and the mystery.
mystique.
Mystic. Yes.
Okay.
Of
The 3 M's. Yes?
Excuse me. Do you mind if you use the black marker or something
Oh,
like
is it
that
hard to
because
see?
you can't see
Sorry.
from the back?
Okay. Black marker. Anything else you'd like to add? Don't worry, we'll be together for the next few days. So now I want to ask you another question. When you're showing your visitors around, which of these things are they most interested in?
Religion, architecture,
Religion?
Food,
architecture,
architecture was the second one.
historic,
Architecture?
Handicraft.
Handicrafts?
lifestyle, food,
Monuments, traditional trade, all.
Traditional trade?
I think it's all.
They also love
Because they listen to one another. When they ask you about religion, they will ask you about food.
And maybe another question. Which of these things on this list do you think that you're not at the moment promoting very much, or you think you'd like to do more in the future?
mystic and mystery.
Mystique? More in the future? Mystery?
Yeah.
performing arts,
More on performing arts? Okay, so I think we have a sense of the tasks that face us ahead. I mean, I think the visitors who come to places like Penang and Malacca already themselves are the ones who are kind of interested in this kind of area. Otherwise, they would go to the beach or something. And so they have an interest in the types of cultural heritage which makes our place a World Heritage Site. But at the same time, there are always the greatest hits. People are always going to the same things. And so what are the other dimensions of the cultural heritage site that you'd like to showcase more in the future? And in a way, this will differentiate the services that you offer from the services that are offered by regular tour guides. And I think this is the hope of the program, that it will deepen your experience and also turn you into a guide, but also kind of an advocate for the heritage site in its fullest dimension. And so this is a kind of just an initial warm-up, just to get us started. And of course, Penang and Malacca is only one out of 1,007 World Heritage Sites around the world. And I think in the 40 plus years that the World Heritage Program has been around, we've seen that the World Heritage Sites in the country are usually some of the greatest tourist attractions that the country has. So the pyramids in Egypt, the Great Wall in China, and even sites that were not very well known before they became World Heritage. So I'm sure nobody knew about Luang Prabang before it became a World Heritage Site. But now it has a huge number of tourists. Lijiang as well was a very quiet place before it became a World Heritage Site. So some places like the Great Wall was very much well known, but there are a lot of other places that are these kind of unseen gems that not so many people went to before, but now are very popular. So in Macau, I'll take a story that Iman maybe would tell you, but he doesn't come till Wednesday, so I can tell it first. The Japanese tourists who are going to Macau before it became a World Heritage Site used to have a certain itinerary of places they'd like to go to, certain Chinese temples, certain shrines, and so forth. But once it became a World Heritage Site, the World Heritage Site of Macau is a little bit different than here. It consists of a series of buildings connected along a trail. So it's not like here where it's like a whole part of the historic center of town. So it's a little bit disconnected. So the Japanese, being very systematic, only wanted to visit the buildings that are listed as World Heritage Site. So some of the Chinese shrines and other historic buildings that were previously very attractive for the Japanese visitors, no longer they go. They only want to go to the World Heritage Site. So you can see that this kind of World Heritage process has a very huge impact on the tourism visitation at a site. And we can see this happening at all places around the world. And UNESCO is now keeping statistics about visitation to tourists to World Heritage Sites. And we can see the immediate impact that this kind of designation has. And in a sense, of course, tourism is definitely a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can generate a lot of benefits. On the other hand, we can see in places like the Taj Mahal that it puts a lot of pressure on the site. So we hope that part of your role as a cultural heritage specialist guide, because you're working at the forefront, you're there in the ground with the visitors every day, you're actually the ones who are more effective in managing their behavior than someone who's sitting in an office at the Georgetown World Heritage Office or in Malacca. The people in the office can only make some guidelines, but you're actually with them every day, so you have the power in your hands to convince them what to do, what not to do. So we we really keep this faith that you will be able to help us to protect the World Heritage Sites so that they can remain with us for next generations to come. And for sure, we also hope that you would help us as well to kind of disseminate the benefits of World Heritage. Several mentioned earlier in your introductions the importance of World Heritage for income, for making money, and for livelihood. And so we hope that your role as well will be to help to disseminate the benefits of World Heritage as widely as possible. And we can see here, just from one site, is from Vietnam. Has anybody been to Vietnam?
Yes.
This is from the Hoi An World Heritage Site, which is in the center of Vietnam. It became a World Heritage Site in 1999, and you can see it on the red line here. This is the year it became World Heritage Site, and consequently after that, the numbers of tourism going to the site has really increased. And so in green is the total number of visitors, in red is the foreign tourists, and in blue is the domestic tourists. So becoming World Heritage has this kind of instant impact, both positive as well as negative. And so coming back to Georgetown, Malacca, many of you have been working well before this site became a World Heritage Site. So you can see before and after. So I'd like to ask you, what kinds of opportunities and what kinds of challenges have you seen at the site since it's become a World Heritage Site? Maybe we start first with the positive, the opportunities or the benefits. More business, more people,
More income.
Recognition.
recognition,
Popularity.
And just create awareness,
create awareness for who?
local community.
Oh, even for local people, yeah? Okay.
Create the opportunity to the local opportunities.
And opportunities.
Community.
Opportunities for them in what to do what?
Involved in part of promotion as well as also preservation of the site.
So, opportunities to be involved in the World Heritage Site and the management process. Anything else? Any other benefits?
More jobs, opportunities for the local communities.
Jobs as well. Anything else? What about some of the negative aspects or some of the challenges you've seen since it's become a World Heritage Site?
Having capacity.
Traffic jam.
Like in Malacca.
Crowd, like Macau is 24 square kilometers big, and they have 24 million tourists a year. Yeah, so congestion.
Congestion. You have noise pollution, you have people pollution, air pollution, bad noise,
Air pollution, people pollution, noise.
because the sites are fragile.
Unrelevant construction.
Construction activities there.
Yes, like the revolving tower.
Yeah.
Appreciation of prices.
So prices are up. So there's a host of challenges that you can see here.
The
Front
rental
rate.
rates.
Rent rate has gone up. Rent's up. Crime.
For people misuse.
And as cultural heritage specialist guides, what can you do to help address some of these negative issues in your own personal or professional capacity?
We have to team up with one voice. The material of where team up.
Serve as advisors, team up in order to try to create some change.
Yes.
What else can you do?
Individually, no.
Looking at the possible solutions, problems that arise.
Help to find certain solutions.
capacity to control.
Let us take it not as a problem, but a challenge to love the heritage site. Our challenge, how to grow. If we face a problem, another problem will come. But if we challenge, we can put the end.
So trying to find some long-term ways to address these issues. Education. Educate local people.
Start from school.
Yeah. Starting from school.
If they take ownership, from a young, very young, then she will come up with that appreciation.
So in a way, you all are very much sort of like mentors or kind of models. People who really know about the site, who really care about the site and are able to transmit this positive energy and this concern for the local people. Some people, they may be the owners of the site or they may be the descendants of the original builders, but they themselves may not often know that much about the site. So ironically, it's people who are working in the profession who actually may know more deeply certain aspects of the heritage site. So we hope that you can carry this forward with you. So now, specialist guides at World Heritage Sites. This is one of several countries that UNESCO has been working on to develop this program for cultural heritage specialist guiding. And the reason that it started was that in 2003, as you may know, there's a periodic reporting. Once you become a World Heritage Site, the government has to send a report back to UNESCO and to the World Heritage Committee every certain number of years about what's going on at your site now. So when they did this exercise in 2003, some 10 years ago, at that time already there was a lot of concern about the impacts of tourism at World Heritage Site. And so the World Heritage Committee made a very specific demand, and they said that tourism needs to be better managed at World Heritage Sites in order to ensure the sustainability of sites. And part of that is to conduct training for tour operators and tour guides who are working at the sites so that they are able to take on these additional functions, not just as guides, but also as guides who are advocates for the site, who help to protect the site, and who help to manage the visitor behavior. And so this was the starting point of this program in 2003. So subsequent to that, UNESCO office in Bangkok, as a regional office, working with a network of universities that offers training in heritage management called the Asian Academy for Heritage Management, started this program to train cultural heritage specialist guides. And amongst our member universities, there was the Institute for Tourism Studies in Macau, which took on the lead institution role to develop the curriculum and to develop the training materials. So this program was launched in 2005, so exactly 10 years ago. And after 2 years of implementation in 2007, it already was getting some very positive feedback. So when we sent a report to the World Heritage Committee about the progress, it was acknowledged by the World Heritage Committee as a really best case example that offers a way to ensure the sustainability of World Heritage Sites, particularly by involving people who are from the local site themselves. Like many of you have introduced, you are actually Penangites, or you're from Malacca, or you're from the site itself, and so you have a kind of vested interest in the site, and it's a way of creating jobs in the local community. And then also from the tourism side, PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association, also recognized the program as an outstanding program in the education field for tourism. So both from the tourism side and from the heritage side, this has been recognized both as a kind of a leading example of a program which is meant to be widely taken up. And so we have undertaken this program now in several countries. So in Southeast Asia we have Laos. This is a picture that you see from Luang Prabang, one of the very first training of trainer exercises that we did for the Mekong countries already some 6-7 years ago. We've done training in Vietnam. The government is very interested, to the point where they were even considering a new decree that said that if any tourists were to visit a World Heritage Site, they would have to go with one of the licensed World Heritage guides. So this is something that is still in the consideration process, but it shows the commitment that the government has at that level. We've also undertaken training in Cambodia at Angkor. In Thailand, right now there's a training going on for Sukhothai. We've done training in Macau, and Iwan will tell you more about that. In China, at Mount Lushan, they piloted the program. They've also done training in Bhutan, in Sri Lanka, in India. They were interested in linking together the World Heritage Sites that are Buddhist-related sites and having a special trail about Buddhist sites in India and training guides specifically to be able to deliver that kind of content. And so as you can see, Malaysia is very much part of a bigger exercise that's going on now in the region, and we're very happy that the ministry has taken this on in a formal way. And so in all of these places, we see these cultural heritage specialist guides operating as the joining force between several things going on. So on the one hand, you have the community. On the other hand, you have the tourism industry. On the other hand, you have the site managers who are professionally working on protecting the site. And so the heritage guide is the one who fits in between, and is the one who can actually connect all of these different sectors together in a way which will benefit the World Heritage Site. And so, especially because the Cultural Heritage Specialist Guide is the link between the site and visitor. And so you play an immediate role in protecting the site, in creating awareness about the site, as you said, not just for the tourists, but also for community members. And also by helping to educate visitors and communities about taking care of the site. So I think numerous studies have shown that heritage protection begins with an understanding of the site. So if you understand the site, you understand why it's important, you understand also why it's vulnerable, then you're in a better position to protect the site. And so both for visitors as well as for local residents alike, this is why we are going to spend quite a lot of time with some of the leading experts from Malaysia and from Penang and from Georgetown, looking at all the different aspects of why this site has become a World Heritage Site, so that when we're able to transmit this message to our visitors, to our peers, to our friends and our neighbors, then hopefully it will help to protect the site. And then by finding ways of sharing tourism benefits with local communities, this will also create the sustainability for the site as well. And so many of our colleagues here today are already licensed guides as recognized by the ministry. And so you already have all of the professional skills needed to be a guide, as well as a huge amount of knowledge about the history and the architecture and so forth about the sites. But at the same time, because this program creates an area of specialized knowledge and an area of specialized skills, we think that it will very much complement whatever you already have in your normal work, and it will build it up even more. And so the program has been structured into 7 core modules of learning, as introduced by Faisal earlier. And so what exactly are these 7 areas? We're in module 1 now, just to kind of get a sense of what it means to be a cultural heritage specialist guide. And the idea is that you'll be sort of giving added service beyond the normal guiding. In what way exactly? First, that you would be able to really explain in depth and with accuracy why the site is a World Heritage Site. From my experience traveling in other places, I can see that many guides often are very good with history. They can tell you which king built it, in what year, how big is the palace, and so forth. But if you ask them, well, why did it become a World Heritage Site? They have a kind of very vague understanding about that. So it's not very clear. And I think the reason it's important to be clear is because once it becomes a World Heritage Site, it's only for a very particular set of reasons. And those reasons or those values of the site or how the site has to be managed, and how it has to be transmitted for the future. And so if we're not very clear exactly why it became a World Heritage Site, it's very hard to protect those qualities. You end up, trying to protect in a general way, but you may miss the real heart of the protection. And so it's important to really have a firm, clear understanding why it became a World Heritage Site. And so we have this afternoon Dr. Yahya Ahmed, who will be joining us, who will explain to us exactly why this became a World Heritage Site. And once we know that, then we can move on to Module 3 is, okay, now we know why Penang and Malacca is a World Heritage Site. So now how do we protect these values that are recognized as World Heritage values? Exactly what is vulnerable, what needs to be given the most attention. And so that is Module 3. So once we know why it's a World Heritage Site and then what must be protected, then the task goes to Module 4, which is how do we interpret these heritage values to visitors and other people? So how do we transmit this knowledge that we now have about this World Heritage Site? Which is something that we call upon you to take part in, not just as a trainee per se, but in fact, as a participant and as a master trainer yourself, you would be in a position to help us to improve the way that this kind of knowledge is best transmitted in a way which is interesting, memorable, engaging, and heartfelt. And then we move on to Module 5 and Module 6. As part of our improved services as a cultural heritage specialist guide, how do we provide the highest level of visitor satisfaction? And how do we manage visitor behavior at World Heritage Site? So in a way, you're a teacher, but also a policeman as well. So how do you undertake your policeman functions at World Heritage Site? And then finally, we'll be looking at Module 7, which is the connection between the heritage site and the community, with the guide being the one in between, making this connection. So how can you yourself, in the work that you do, improve the benefits for the local community so that they feel that they have a meaningful part of the World Heritage experience, the tourism that happens in the World Heritage Site, they feel like they're still very much the owners of the site and welcoming guests to their home. And so I'd like at this point to ask you to think a little bit about the work that you do normally already, and then based on what we've been discussing, the additional skills you think you would like to develop further in the next 6 days here together, and then at home by yourself over session 2, and then session 3 in Malacca. Based on all the things we discussed, what are the skills that you'd like to work on more as part of being a cultural heritage specialist guide?
Interpretation skills. Interpretations.
More on interpretation. So Dr. Iman, when he comes, will spend quite a lot of time working on the issue of interpretation, sharing with you some tips and techniques that are being practiced in other places that have worked out very well. It's very interesting, the World Bank, which usually you don't think as being involved in heritage issues, the World Bank just did a seminar in Washington, D.C., inviting a specialist in heritage interpretation to come to explain to the bank members who are working in the area of kind of tourism and urban management, how heritage interpretation can improve the sustainability of the site, precisely for the reasons we talked about just now. So even the World Bank is interested in interpretation. Sorry?
Yeah, possibly we could, because this one is interrelated between this side of the world to the other side of the world, from north, south, east, west, what we call that correlation, should that be the word?
So looking at some of these connections more.
Yep.
And in fact, that's one of the things that we hope will come out of the materials as well, is that if we look at a site like Borobudur in Indonesia, In fact, there are going to be some guides who can only explain about Borobudur itself, history and so forth, architecture. But there will be some other guides who will be able to explain the larger context of Borobudur, how it actually is related to Angkor, how it's different from Angkor, how it's different from the precedents of India. And there are always going to be that group of tourists who are really interested and they want to know what is, the connection between these different places. And in fact, they're all World Heritage Sites, and so there is in themselves a connection to be had. The challenge for us here at a more local level is the connection between Penang and Malacca, because the reality is, of course, the sites are very much related, but at the same time, they're often, managed and so forth separately. And so, for many people, they are different. But in fact, the challenge, even at the time of nominating the World Heritage Site, some of you may be familiar with the background story. It took quite a lot of time and a lot of revisions to get it to become a World Heritage Site, precisely because of the problem that the two sites kept being presented almost separately. So Malacca would write its own part, Penang would write its own part, and then they would send it to one guy who would just cut and paste into one document and then send it off to UNESCO. Okay, now we have the proposal for World Heritage. And it came back and it said, I'm sorry, this is not the way that you do a World Heritage nomination. You have to look at the site together, even though it's in two separate places. So it came back and forth several times, and over several years had to be changed. And so this, I think, continues to be the challenge that faces us in Malaysia.
I think just to elaborate a little bit on the interpretation, every site has its interest. It's only how we go about bringing the site to life, give it life. It may be going back to the time of history, but it's just like letting the world tell the stories, make it come alive again.
So how to make the site come alive, I think, is the challenge.
Yes.
And I like what you said was letting the wall speak. Also letting the people and the other parts of it speak as well.
Okay, the site has been prepared a long time ago. Not the problem, the challenge is the surrounding. The surrounding the area. For instance, you go to Kuala Kedah, the first Singapore. That is the main entrance. But what happened with the surrounding? Not say neglected. They put the area. That means they should control the area, certain materials from the site. Like Kuala Kedah is the first starting point, starting before Parameswara, 1300s. Before they moved, before the state of Kedah moved to Olostar, that's Kuala Kedah, where the wind, the ship in the ocean ends, and they anchor to find fresh water and wait for a new south-western. That is the most simple. If you go straight, you see the monument is still neglected, not say neglected, but the surrounding of the area. And it will pass about. This belongs to my land.
So to respond to your concern, I'll share with you another example from Hoi An in Vietnam that we looked at the statistics just now. Hoi An is a little bit like here, but even smaller. And some of you have been. I once went to do a workshop there for 7 days, and when I went back to Bangkok, I went to a big trade fair in Bangkok, an architecture trade fair. And my first impression was the whole town of Hoi An could fit inside the exhibition hall. That was my feeling, because it's very compact, and so it's, if you go, it's literally just like 2-3 streets, people walking around, and it's a pedestrian area, and so they have a lot of problems with congestion because tons of visitors are coming and there's not enough space. And so what the government of Hoi An is doing now is to develop secondary destinations around the immediate perimeter of the historic town. So it's on a river, so if you go across the river, there's a pottery village and a carpentry village. And then if you go the other side, there's some farms that have been existing for a long time. So now they're doing agro-tourism to the farms. And so in this way, it reduces the congestion on the historic center, but it also makes the connection with the surrounding areas, like you say, better, and it gives the benefits economically to those local villagers as well. In the past, they had no connection to the World Heritage Site. Only the the hotels, the restaurants, and so forth were getting the economic benefits. But now the local people, the farmers, the carpenters, the fishermen, and so forth, they're also getting benefits as well. And it also makes for a more pleasant experience in Hoi An itself, so you're not really crowded so much anymore. Okay, so I think we have, yes?
Okay. Besides the art of interpretation, interaction, I believe that some of the places can be very interesting, but the way the guide is interpreting, it may be very dull. Some places it is a moderate, but the way the guide interprets, it is very interesting. So one of the skills, very important here, is the presentation skills.
Storyline. Prepare the storyline.
Presentation skills.
I agree on that because you can have like myself, basically we utilize the local who is the oldies, the storyteller. For instance, if I go to Kota Pulau Muda, another new site, I cannot tell the story, but the oldies will be there. So when he tells the story, I just translate when all the group is. So the oldies, the local oldies, we must make note. In Perlis, Awang Batik, by 5 weeks, we can tell the story of Morocco.
So this will kill two birds with one stone. So you have a more interesting approach to telling the story, but it also involves the local people who are there, and so they feel like they're kind of the host. Yeah.
Heritage educators.
Heritage educators.
Can we sit there again, please?
Can you explain more?
Because the role of the guide is not just interpretation, because we need to share a little bit of knowledge to those who knows about conservation and preservation of heritage. So we can play a role by becoming an educator, making awareness of conservation and preservation at the site.
And so this is in itself, it's a very difficult skill to be able to convince people to want to preserve and so forth. So this is something that we can work on together in the next few days.
Because very often when you become a heritage educator, you're also rubbing some of the government agencies, you're ruffling their feathers, and you become, that kind. So how do we balance that? We have to work together.
So trying to find a balance between development and preservation, and then how do you manage yourself in between that? Anything else that you see that you'd like to work on, or you think we collectively have to work on in the next 12 days together?
Orientation skill with the local folks.
Yeah. What problems do you see now that are still lacking? There was another hand. Yeah.
I think
Did you not get that, please? Louder, please. What's the word?
Communication skills with the local people.
Thank you.
Desmond, your challenges with that. I think we know where it's coming from. Maybe we should elaborate the challenges that we face with the local people. Because they do not see the big picture of how heritage, how it's going to benefit them. They are very close.
Cooperations with the local folks, especially those that are trade, so to them they be very negative. Look at only like disturbing the it's very important.
Infringing on their privacy.
Some may change that. Usually they are very defensive on those stuff, especially after a few years of disturbing policy. I can't say Putra no problems, Usually they say Putra no problem. How you communicate make them involved. Awareness.
Cooperation from them.
So that's very interesting.
One more thing, rewrite the story and turn it into Betomai or theater, like what our friends doing in in Pasir people don't know who is Adnan. But they come with the story. And we come with a better mind, it's not going to take that to TV film, rewrite the story and translation is part of it and we start like the Burung Wawasa and then the Nureda, Mount Ophir.
So I think this would be part of developing some of these interpretation techniques, but also interpretation materials as well. And I think for the group that's coming from the Northern Corridor, this will be very helpful to have your inputs because they need, over the break in session 2, they will be tasked with coming up with interpretation.